You do not join MI6 the day you walk into headquarters. You join it the moment you learn to keep your mouth shut. It begins somewhere ordinary: a bedroom, a library, a phone screen glowing in the dark, a careers page that looks almost disappointingly normal. No dramatic music, no hidden door, no man in a black car waiting outside. Just an application form, a government website, and one quiet decision that will divide your life into before and after. Because the first thing the Secret Intelligence Service teaches you is not how to recruit an agent or evade surveillance. It teaches you that secrecy starts long before the mission, before the training, before the first passport under diplomatic cover, before the first meeting with a stranger who will one day betray his country because you asked him to. And once that silence begins, it follows you everywhere. It follows you into interviews where every answer is measured for weakness, into training rooms where you learn to sound sincere while building lies that can survive scrutiny, into foreign capitals where one wrong glance, one repeated face, one careless conversation can end a career, destroy a network, or get someone killed. This is not the glamorous life people imagine. It is colder than that, more patient, more intimate, more dangerous. This is your life inside MI6, not as a hero, not as a myth, but as a person who must disappear so the country can keep pretending it sleeps safely tonight. The strange thing is how small it looks in the beginning. You expect the threshold into a secret life to feel dramatic. You expect a heavy door, a coded phone call, a face across the street watching your window. Instead, it begins with a web page, clean layout, government branding, ordinary language, a list of requirements and competencies that reads like any other public service role until you understand what is actually being asked of you. You are not applying for a job. You are volunteering to become invisible. The page tells you about discretion, judgment, communication, resilience. It speaks in the calm vocabulary of institutions, but beneath every sentence is a harder truth. They are looking for someone who can live with silence, someone who can hold two versions of life in the same mind without letting them touch. So you click apply. And the first secret is not operational. It is domestic. You do not tell your parents. You do not tell your partner. You do not tell the friend who knows everything else about you. If they ask why you seem distracted, you say work is busy, or you are thinking about a move, or you are tired. The lie is small, almost harmless. That is what makes it dangerous. It teaches you how easily a new self can begin to grow inside the old one. From that point forward, every stage is a test. Even before the official tests begin, can you keep still when you want to share good news? Can you tolerate uncertainty without reaching for reassurance? Can you carry ambition in private? Can you let a part of your life become sealed off without demanding that anyone notice the door has closed? This is the first dividing line between the fantasy and the profession. In films, espionage begins with action. In real life, it begins with restraint. A career in MI6 does not start when someone hands you a cover identity or sends you overseas. It starts the moment you accept that secrecy is no longer an event. It is a habit, a discipline, a private architecture that begins in your own home at your own table with your own silence. Before they trust you with other people's secrets, they need to know what could break your own. That is what the vetting really is. Not paperwork, not bureaucracy, not one more obstacle between you and the job. It is the state trying to map the hidden fault lines in your life before someone else finds them first. So they begin to read you in pieces. Your finances, your debts, your relationships, the people you love, the people you used to love, the people you may still be vulnerable to, your travel history, your habits, your digital footprint, the opinions you expressed when you thought nobody important was listening, the years you have lived in Britain, the gaps in your timeline, the small inconsistencies that might mean nothing or might mean everything. At first it feels administrative, then it starts to feel personal, then it starts to feel surgical, because the questions are not only about what you have done, they are about where pressure would work, what you are ashamed of, what you regret, what you fear being known, whether you need approval too badly, whether resentment lives in you longer than it should, whether loneliness could be exploited, whether money could bend you, whether ideology could blind you, whether ego could make you feel important enough to become careless. That is the logic behind all of it. An intelligence officer with a weakness is not merely a flawed employee. He is a future vulnerability with a passport. So the process goes deeper than most people imagine. People who know you may be contacted, contacted. People who knew you years ago may be contacted. Fragments of your life are compared from multiple angles until a pattern begins to emerge. And the unsettling part is that the process is sometimes better at showing you who you are than you have been to yourself. This is the moment when the romance of espionage starts to fade, because there is nothing glamorous about sitting still while strangers evaluate whether your private life contains the seeds of betrayal. There is nothing cinematic about realizing that patriotism is not enough, intelligence is not enough, ambition is not enough. They are not looking for a perfect person. They are looking for a person whose weaknesses are visible, understood, and unlikely to become a weapon in someone else's hand. And if you pass, you do not feel triumphant. You feel exposed. Cleared, perhaps, but exposed. As if the country has looked under the floorboards of your life, found what was hidden there, and decided for now that you may proceed. Fort Monkton does not look like the place where a new identity is born. It looks old, defensive, quiet in the way military buildings often feel quiet, as if history has settled into the walls and chosen not to leave. But inside, the work is not about the past. It is about constructing a future version of you that can survive contact with suspicion. This is where the performance begins. Not performance in the theatrical sense. Nobody is teaching you to act flamboyantly, to charm a room, or to deliver clever lines like a film spy. The instruction is colder than that, more precise. You are being taught how to make artificial trust feel natural, how to speak with control, how to listen without revealing hunger, how to remain calm while every word, every pause, every glance is being measured by the person across from you, because the central skill of this profession is not deception alone. It is believable sincerity. You learn how to identify a potential source, not abstractly, but clinically. Access, motivation, pressure points, patterns of behavior, the quiet signs that someone may be carrying information, and a private dissatisfaction at the same time. You are taught to study people the way other professions study data. A hesitation can matter, a complaint can matter, a vanity can matter, so can loneliness, money, frustration, ideology, status, resentment. The motives are rarely pure. That is exactly why they are useful. Then comes the harder lesson: how to build a relationship that feels human while serving a strategic purpose. You practice conversations that do not sound like recruitment but are already moving toward it. You learn how to ask without appearing to ask, how to create comfort without offering too much of yourself, how to leave another person feeling seen, respected, and understood even when the exchange is being guided toward an outcome that only you fully recognize. And then there is cover, not a disguise, not a fake accent and a different haircut. A life, a coherent existence with a profession, a history, a reason for being where you are, a pattern of habits that can withstand scrutiny from officials trained to detect weakness and fiction. The identity must be simple enough to remember, detailed enough to survive pressure, and ordinary enough not to invite curiosity. The best cover is not dramatic, it is boring. You also learn the mechanics that keep people alive: surveillance detection routes, coded communication, secret writing, secure exchanges, dead drops, the discipline of assuming that hostile eyes may already be closer than you think. Firearms training appears too, but it arrives almost as a footnote. Useful, necessary, secondary, because the real weapon here is still the oldest one: a conversation. By the time the course ends, nobody tells you that you have become a different person. The change is subtler than that. You still sound like yourself. You still move like yourself. But now you understand how identity can be built, adjusted, concealed, and deployed. And once you learn that, you never again meet another human being in quite the same way. Then you arrive at Vauxhall, and the fantasy changes shape. From the outside, this is the building people recognize: the headquarters on the Thames, the strange, unmistakable silhouette, the public symbol of a service that is supposed to remain unseen. If Fort Monkton taught you the craft, Vauxhall teaches you the machine. Because intelligence is not only built in hotel bars, embassy receptions, and backseat meetings in foreign capitals. It is also built here, in offices, briefing rooms, secure corridors, and systems designed to turn scattered human risk into usable national advantage. At first, that feels almost disappointing. You imagine the field. Instead, you find process, tasking, reporting chains, cross-department coordination, requirements flowing in from ministries, defense officials, diplomats, analysts, and policymakers who do not want stories. They want answers. Specific, actionable, timely answers. What is the threat? Who is moving? What is being planned? What can be confirmed? What remains uncertain? And that is when you begin to understand the deeper truth of the profession. A spy is never working alone, even when he appears to be. Behind every officer overseas is a structure deciding priorities, validating intelligence, comparing sources, questioning assumptions, shaping operations, and measuring whether the risk of running a source is justified by what that source may actually produce. The glamour drains away here, but something more important replaces it: scale. You rotate through roles that teach you how the organism functions. In one place, you help identify potential targets. In another, you refine reporting so it answers the real needs of government rather than the vanity of the collector. Elsewhere, you help coordinate operations, timelines, support, permissions, and capabilities that the field officer may barely see. This is where you learn that intelligence is not made dramatic by secrecy. It is made powerful by relevance. A beautifully recruited agent who delivers unusable information is a romantic failure. A quiet operation that answers the right question at the right moment can move policy, alter diplomacy, and shape events far beyond the room where the report is written. So Vauxhall does something essential to your imagination. It makes the work less cinematic and far more real. Your first overseas posting does not feel like arrival. It feels like division. On paper, you are one thing. In reality, you are another. Your passport, your title, your place on the embassy roster all say diplomat, political officer, trade attaché, cultural liaison, some respectable variation of public service abroad. But beneath the paperwork is the real reason you have been sent there. You are not in this country to observe it politely. You are there to enter its human terrain and find the one person who might give Britain what it needs. That changes the way you see everything. A city stops being a city in the normal sense. It becomes a map of possibilities, frictions, ambitions, resentments, routines. Every ministry building, conference hall, military reception, trade event, academic gathering, and diplomatic dinner is no longer just a setting. It is a field of potential access. Someone in that room knows something. Someone in that room feels overlooked, insulted, underpaid, ideologically torn, professionally trapped, or privately angry. Your job is to work out who. This is where the profession becomes intimate. Not because you are physically close to danger, though you are, but because the real work depends on entering another person's private logic. You sit across from men and women whose governments would call them loyal, and you begin the slow process of discovering what loyalty has cost them. Sometimes it is pride, sometimes money, sometimes promotion, sometimes a sense of meaning. Sometimes they have spent years watching mediocre people rise above them. Sometimes they hate what their state has become. Sometimes they simply want to be seen by someone intelligent enough to understand what they are capable of. So you listen. That is the first discipline of the field. Not speaking brilliantly, listening with purpose. Letting a person unfold in front of you until the outline of a possible relationship begins to emerge. You note the complaints they repeat, the stories they linger on, the names they mention too carefully, the bitterness they try to disguise as humor, the vanity they pretend is principle, the private wound hiding beneath the polished surface. And all the while, you remain divided. At the embassy, you attend meetings, file cables, stand at receptions with a drink in your hand, and perform the visible life your cover requires. Outside it, you are building something far more delicate, a connection that may, if handled correctly, become a channel into another government, another military, another system of secrets. This is why the cover matters so much. Not because it makes you look mysterious, but because it gives you permission to be present, to belong in rooms where contact can happen naturally, to ask questions that seem harmless, to return calls, to be remembered without being feared. By now you understand something that outsiders rarely do. The officer in the field is not a warrior moving through clear enemy lines. He is a patient reader of people, a collector of doubt, a hunter, yes, but not of bodies, of openings. And the hardest part is this: by the time you find the right one, the person who has access and motive and just enough loneliness or anger or ambition to lean toward you, he no longer feels like a target. He feels like someone you know. For weeks, sometimes months, nothing visible happens. You meet for coffee. then lunch, then a reception, then another conversation that appears from the outside to be nothing more than two professionals speaking the language of their shared world, policy, trade, security, bureaucratic frustration, family, travel. The rhythms of ordinary trust begin to form. That is the point. Recruitment does not begin with pressure. It begins with familiarity. You learn how he thinks, not just what he believes, but how he organizes disappointment, which humiliations he never forgot, which ambitions survive failure, whether he wants money, recognition, revenge, purpose, escape, or simply a private audience with someone who seems to understand him better than his own institution ever did. People rarely betray for one reason alone. Motive accumulates. It layers. A grievance attaches itself to ego. Ego attaches itself to need. Need attaches itself to opportunity. By the time a person is ready to cross the line has already been moving inside him for a long time. Your task is to know when it has moved far enough. Too early and he recoils. Too late and the window closes. Someone else is promoted. He is transferred. He loses access. He becomes frightened, or worse, suspicious. Timing is not a detail in this work. Timing is the work. So you wait and build. You become very carefully the safest place in his week. The person before whom irritation can become honesty. The person who does not judge, does not rush, does not interrupt. He begins to feel understood. That feeling is invaluable. Not because it is fake, though part of it is constructed, but because it often contains something real. You do understand him. You have studied him too closely not to, and that is what makes the next moment so dangerous. The approach is not dramatic. It almost never resembles the movies. No envelopes pushed across a table. No explicit declaration that changes the soundtrack of the room. More often, it is a conversation that shifts by a few degrees, then a few more, until both of you understand that you are no longer speaking as friends, diplomats, or colleagues. You are speaking as two people standing at the edge of treason. You frame it carefully. You appeal to what already lives inside him, duty to a higher principle, disgust with corruption, fear of a coming disaster. The belief that history is being driven by fools. Sometimes money is part of it, sometimes ideology, sometimes ego. Usually it is a combination arranged in the language most acceptable to the person hearing it. Then you stop talking, because this is the silence that decides everything. If he says no, the room changes instantly. The tone, the air, the future. He may walk away and never speak to you again. He may report you. He may become bait in a counterintelligence operation designed to pull you into the open. Your cover can collapse from this one decision. Your posting can end. Years of preparation can vanish in a single refusal. If he says yes, the danger does not diminish. It deepens. Now he is yours, and you are responsible for what that means. He will go home to his family carrying a secret that can imprison him, torture him, or kill him. He will hand over information because you persuaded him that the risk was justified. Because you built a relationship strong enough to move him across the most irreversible line in his life. And that is the truth no training course can fully prepare you for. Success in this profession does not feel clean. The first time someone agrees to betray his country for you, there is exhilaration in it. Relief, professional pride, the sharp knowledge that you have done something difficult and rare. But braided into all of that is another feeling, one that arrives quietly and never entirely leaves: guilt. Because whatever explanation you give yourself, whatever strategic necessity, whatever noble purpose, one fact remains. You asked another human being to destroy the life he had before meeting you, and he said yes. Once you begin running an agent, the city changes again. Before, it was a place full of opportunities. Now it is full of failure points. The restaurant where you once enjoyed the comfort of anonymity becomes a place with too many mirrors and too many angles of approach. The hotel lobby becomes a theater of exposure. The street outside your embassy residence becomes a question asked every morning. Was that car there yesterday? Did that man on the corner look up too quickly? Why is the same woman suddenly appearing on two different routes across the city? In this phase of the job, pattern recognition stops being professional skill and becomes a survival instinct, because hostile capitals do not sleep. Their intelligence services are trained to assume that Western diplomats are not always what they claim to be. In some countries, that assumption is not paranoia, it is policy. The local service watches embassies, tracks habits, studies routines, photographs meetings, maps social circles, and waits for carelessness. They do not need you to fail dramatically, they only need you to repeat yourself. So you stop repeating yourself. Before every sensitive meeting, you run a surveillance detection route, a sequence of movements that looks pointless to everyone except the people trained to understand it. A change of direction, a pause in a crowded place, an unnecessary turn, a delayed arrival, a switch in pace, a detour through noise, glass, traffic, or public transport. You are not trying to lose surveillance in the cinematic sense. You are trying to answer a more important question. Am I alone enough to continue? And if the answer is uncertain, you abort. That is one of the hardest disciplines in the profession. Not bravery, not nerve, abortion. Walking away after days or weeks of planning because something feels wrong and you cannot prove it. There is no reward for pressing forward on instinct when instinct is warning you to stop. Intelligence officers do not get points for courage if the result is a compromised source. So you learn to live with incompletion, a meeting canceled, a document undelivered, a question unanswered, an anxious agent told to go home and wait. It feels wasteful, sometimes even humiliating, but this is the arithmetic of survival. Better a missed opportunity than a dead source, because the danger is never distributed equally. If you are declared persona non grata, your career takes a wound and your posting ends. You go home under official language and private embarrassment, but your agent does not go home to the same kind of safety. If he is identified, he may disappear into interrogation, prison, torture, or an execution chamber that will never be acknowledged publicly. The officer is protected by the state. The agent is exposed to his own. That imbalance sits underneath every operational decision. It is why old names remain in the bloodstream of the profession. Penkovsky, who passed crucial intelligence and was caught. Gordievsky, who spied for Britain for years and escaped only through extraordinary exfiltration. These are not just stories of tradecraft. They are warnings about consequence. Every successful operation contains the possibility of catastrophe hidden inside it. And after enough time in hostile environments, you begin to understand the deepest rule of the work. Certainty is a luxury. You will almost never know enough. You will never fully control the city around you. You will never eliminate risk. All you can do is read, judge, adapt, and sometimes walk away from something valuable because the cost of being wrong is measured in another person's life. That is when the profession stops feeling adventurous and starts feeling grave. Nobody congratulates you in the way ordinary careers are celebrated. There is no clean sense of ascent, no moment when promotion feels like uncomplicated success. On paper, yes, you have moved upward, more responsibility, more authority, a broader portfolio. Other officers now look to you for guidance, approval, protection. But what the promotion really means is simpler and heavier than that. Other people will now take risks on the strength of your judgment. You are no longer only the person crossing streets, reading faces, and making delicate approaches in restaurants and embassy corridors. You are becoming the person who decides whether those meetings should happen at all, which source is worth the exposure, which officer is ready, which city can absorb more pressure, which operation deserves more money, more time, more political capital? Which danger is acceptable and which only looks acceptable from far away? This is why the promotion feels strange. The adrenaline fades first. In its place comes calculation. Not coldness, exactly, but a disciplined form of distance. You learn to think in layers. Intelligence value, diplomatic consequence, operational security, psychological strain on the officer, stability of the source, exposure of the wider network. Every decision touches 3 other decisions, and each of them reaches into lives you may never fully see. This is also the stage where leadership becomes morally uneven. A young officer may still believe that good tradecraft can solve most problems. Experience teaches something harsher. Some operations are brilliant and still fail. Some sources are loyal and still break. Some officers are careful and still get unlucky. When the profession looks upward for certainty, it usually finds probability instead, and yet the decision still has to be made. Approve the meeting, delay the contact, increase the payment, reduce exposure, pull the officer out, keep the source in place, attempt exfiltration, deny involvement, preserve the network, sacrifice the asset. Every choice arrives in language that sounds procedural, but beneath the language is the same brutal truth. A life may bend around what you decide in the next 10 minutes. That is why nobody who understands the work envies seniority for long, because rank inside an intelligence service does not simply give you power. It redistributes fear. The fear no longer sits only in your body on a dark street or in a watched cafe. It sits in your mind, in your signatures, in the quiet after a message is sent, when all that remains is consequence moving towards someone else. And the higher you rise, the less often anyone sees what that costs you. By the time you reach the upper levels of the service, the battlefield is no longer only foreign streets. It is meeting rooms. Now the work shifts from recruiting secrets to governing their movement. You sit with officials from allied services, defense structures, ministries, and intelligence committees, and the central question is no longer only what you know. It is what you are willing to share, when you are willing to share it, and what damage may follow either choice. This is the quiet war that rarely appears in public imagination. Allies cooperate, but they do not merge. Every service protects its own sources, its own methods, its own strategic advantage. The Americans may give more, but they also collect more. Regional partners may be useful, but not equally secure. A foreign liaison can be essential on Monday and a leak risk by Thursday. Trust exists, but in intelligence, trust is never unguarded. Inside government, the tension takes another form. Politicians want clarity. Departments want speed. Bureaucracies want documentation. Lawyers want defensibility. Intelligence rarely arrives in a form that satisfies all four. It is fragmentary, time-sensitive, and often morally untidy. Yet decisions still need to be made, and those decisions depend on how persuasively uncertainty is translated into action. So this level of the job becomes a contest between secrecy and usefulness. Hold too much back, and partners may fail in ways that damage your own interests. Share too much, and a source, a method, or an entire operation may be compromised. What looks from the outside like coordination is often a constant, quiet negotiation over risk, leverage, and survival. At this altitude, information is no longer just collected, it is rationed. At the very top of the service, the work becomes almost invisible. There is no glamour left now, only scale, consequence, and history. Files move upward through layers of secrecy. Decisions move downward through layers of obedience. Somewhere, a signature in green ink authorizes actions the public will never hear about, involving people whose names may never be released, in countries most citizens will never connect to their own safety. This is the final transformation of the job. You began as someone keeping a private secret. You end inside an institution built from national secrets, where the distance between a written decision and a human consequence can stretch across continents and years. Some operations will save lives, some will destroy them, many will vanish into sealed archives, redacted records, and official silence. And then, while all of that weight remains in motion, somewhere else in Britain, someone young is staring at a careers page on a phone screen, not yet understanding what a single click can cost. She reads, she hesitates, she applies, and the machine opens for her, just as it once opened for you. What makes a life in MI6 so compelling is not the glamour people imagine, but the contradiction at its core. To protect a nation, you may have to manipulate trust, conceal truth, and carry decisions that never leave your conscience. The real lesson is that intelligence work is not only about gathering secrets. It is about understanding human weakness, including your own, and living with the cost of what that understanding allows you to do. And the future will only make that burden heavier. Artificial intelligence, cyber warfare, biometric surveillance, and global data tracking may change the tools of espionage, but they will not remove the oldest part of the job. One person studying another person, looking for fear, ambition, loneliness, belief, and the moment of private doubt becomes a national opportunity. So what do you think? In a world of total surveillance, will human spies become less important or more essential than ever? And if you were given the chance to live this life, could you carry the secrecy, the pressure, and the guilt that come with it? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us which part of this MI6 journey surprised you most. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share it with someone who loves the hidden history of power.